Google Pixel phone on the T-Mobile network. This is what I'm streaming through. And the last time I tried to do this, I'm not using StreamYard today. I'm just like streaming straight. But the last time I tried to do it over my data, it was just horrible. I think that was on August 10th. You have to go back and look how bad it was. But anyway, we'll see if this is gonna work. So anyway, thoughts for today. Um, I had a conversation this morning about actually, in Philippians where it talks about things that we should be putting our focus on, whatever is true, whatever is good, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good report. Think about these things. And so that was, but the first thing, is it true? Is it true? And the reality is that uh, the most of the things on social media that you see, and probably media in general, hopefully not media in general, but social media, most of the things, they're not true. They're fake. They're made up. They're sock puppet accounts, spinning stories that they've stolen from other people or just made up out of whole cloth. And a lot of the things that you think you know because you've seen it on social media probably isn't true. So how do we know things are true? How do we know things are true? The first essay that I wrote for an unexpected journal was from the river. What was it? It's from the Green Book to the River. Lewis and Constructivism in Education, and that was on. I was that issue was on the Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. I have a couple videos on my YouTube channel that talk about that, but it also so I wrote an essay on, and when I started writing the essay, I knew I wanted to talk about our shady school board and the superintendent they had brought in. So this one I wrote, it was in 2018. The whole drama with our superintendent started in 2016, and then there was this crazy election that still, I don't know, talk to anybody who lived through that, and that was just stunned. It's like, what's going on here? But I wanted to talk. I had been, since they brought the superintendent in, I had been reading about what was going on in education and the attempts to basically take it over, to you know basically put in um, education that was more like individualized. Basically, constructivism is when there's different. You can read the essay that I wrote, but there's different types of constructivism. Constructivism is when when you personalize education, realizing that each student has a different way of learning, and you need to communicate the information with them a little bit differently so that they can understand it, right? So that can be a form of constructivism. But then there's also a form of constructivism where basically you just make up your own truth, right? Whatever you say goes. Whatever you decide a topic is going to be, then that's what it is. And that's an extreme form of constructivism. I didn't go back and read this first, but anyway, that was basically what the essay was about. And I had been reading about just what had been going on in education as an industry. And there's a lot of money in education, and there are people who have programs that they just continue with, and they have good salespeople, but their programs are garbage. And one of the biggest boondoggles in the history of education is whole language learning, and for reading, because phonics is the way that people learn. Like, it's not only about learning to read, but when you use systematic phonics to learn reading, it trains your brain. It literally trains your brain, and it trains your brain to work in a way that advanced readers use. So I probably said this multiple times. When I was reading with the Afghans, one of the things that, or just working with them generally, and just the Bible studies, talking with them, interacting with them, but one of the things that really impressed me was it was very obvious to me that their teachers is, NATO had been there for 2 decades, and so pretty much everybody under 30 went through um, schools, and while NATO was there, and in their schools, this is in the public schools, they're taught three languages. So the Afghans that I worked with were primarily um, Hazara, but the other kind of the ruling, historically the ruling ethnicity in Afghanistan was the Pashtuns. So they taught Dari, they taught Pashto, and they also taught English. And what was very obvious to me about the I'm so okay. I can't tell if that was a message retracted. Okay, I didn't see it. Sorry. So, what was very obvious to me about the just working with them is that they were taught English using phonics, because I kid you not, they can read anything. They can sound out any words. Sometimes the way they sound it out is a little weird, because English is a weird language. It has a lot of exceptions to rules, but they can sound out anything, even if they don't know what the word means. They can sound it out because they were taught phonetically. They were taught phonetically, so they can read it. I've told them they probably could read, just straight read, even if they don't know all the words. They could probably read better than probably the majority of Americans, because the majority of Americans haven't been taught reading phonics. They've been taught reading whole language learning, and this is a problem. This not only does it it um, it affects like how you read, but it also affects like how you understand things, because the thing is, there's a connection between sound and meaning. And when I was going through the biblical languages program for a little bit, was using I was taking Hebrew and Greek at the same time. And some people may say that's not really a great plan, but this is, for me, it was good, because there was a process, and the what we were covering in like each language was about at the same speed at the same time. So I was learning that. I don't know if that makes sense, but the different grammar rules, I was learning both for each of the languages. So for me, it's like context. Context helps. And so it just helped for me, because I was learning what I was learning in Greek. I was also learning the equivalent in Hebrew at the same time. But what I noticed was that I would look at a word. Sometimes I'd have these vocabulary words. I would look at a word, and I just looking at it, I would not know what the meaning, like I could not remember the meaning. But once I sounded it out, because that's the way to learn language, that's the way to learn language, is phonetically. But once I sounded it out, I was like, I remembered it, because it was the sound. Just the sight of the word didn't really make it click, but it was the sound of the word. I was like, okay, now I know what this is. And I think that's part of the reason that we seem to have there seems to be a block of understanding meaning to things, is that kids aren't taught phonetically. And not only the kids today, but their parents have been taught phonetically. They've been taught with whole language learning, and teachers have been taught to teach whole language learning. So I've been in groups um, with uh, you know, like Humble ISD parents. There have been conversations about this multiple times, and they're like, "Oh, they teach phonics, and they have context clues. Context clues is not phonics, okay? Context clues is whole language learning." Now, here's the thing: that is a reading strategy about learning the context. There's nothing wrong with context clues, but it's not phonics. It's not phonics. So here's the thing. I was going to talk about truth, but now I'm getting off on phonics. But this is the thing. It's like when this this actually is. I think part of it. There's two reasons about that. I think this is why. Um, okay, I don't know. Do you live in Ohio? No, I don't live in Ohio. Um, okay, so what I'm talking about, I was going to talk about truth, but I've been talking about phonics. like the importance of actual phonics in reading and the impact. I'm going to change the title of the stream. Obviously, the impact that it has on us, not only as like somebody just being able to read well, but just us as a society, right? So I have read books, and it's like people, sometimes people, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they'll read the words, right? And um so I did respond to your question, but um by phonics, that's how you learn to read, or by whole language learning? Because I've yeah, because phonics is, this is a story about like my kids and phonics. We when we moved to the place where my girls grew up in Kingwood, we were told that Kingwood had great schools, and that Humble ISD had great schools. And so we actually got less house, older house than we could have gotten in another area, because this was, yeah. So Anthony's saying, when I was a little kid, I needed help to read. Well, that's the thing. Everybody needs help to read, right? And it depends on how we're taught to read. And so this is the other thing that I've read about reading. I have a playlist on education on my Race to Walk channel, and there's a it's an interview or two people discussing phonics, and like basically the science shows that um, that phonics is the best way to teach reading. But everybody needs, nobody just comes out of the womb knowing how to read, right? And so everybody needs help learning to read, and how people are taught makes a difference. And one of the things, like for parents with kids that are real little, it's learning to recognize sound and rhythm that can help them learn to read. So like reading like rhymes and poetry like Mother Goose is not just about uh, it's not just about entertainment. It's about when you read those things to them, like Dr. Seuss books. That's another one. There's a rhythm and a pattern, and learning the sounds of the letters and language. That is basically, those are pre-reading skills that um, you can help them learn, that makes learning reading easier. But yeah, so it's the sounds, it's phonics. And so I was going back to my girls, I was told that these are great schools, and so they go into, she goes into kindergarten, and they're teaching, you know I didn't know anything about education at, like, current education at the time, and I was just thinking these great schools are going to be using the best. um yeah, if you learn with phonics, it's you learn fast when you have the system. But when they were using at the school, they were actually, it was whole language learning, and they had these word boxes, and they'd have these sight words that they would send home, and I literally, I it just drove me crazy, because there was no, I could not figure out, because to me, if you were going to send groups of words home, I was taught phonetically, so to me the logical thing is you would be sending home words that have the same sounds, so you can see them between words. That's not what they were doing. It would have things related to time. It was the craziest thing. I was so frustrated with it, and I actually said to a friend, like, I don't even know how to help my daughter with this, because this makes no sense to me. And she said, well, you just have to memorize it. Well, this is the thing. When you memorize words, okay, you know that word, but that doesn't help you with other words. You had bad books, a lot of different stories. Oh, bird books. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just, you know, the more you read, like, the more familiar you become with words and language. And so Anyway, I was so frustrated with the school, like the program, that I ended up buying Hooked on Phonics off of eBay and taking my second daughter through it. And then with my youngest daughter, she went to a different preschool for when she was 4 than my older two had, and they taught phonics. They taught phonics, and so by the time she got to kindergarten, she was close to reading, and but I think she kind of regressed a little bit in kindergarten because they were using whole language learning as a program. She had been taught with phonics, but because she had been taught with phonics, my oldest daughter said, "Mom, why don't I have the fast reading genes like her sisters do?" And I'm like, "It's not genes. It's not genes. It was phonics. You weren't taught with phonics." I had trusted the schools and what they were teaching because supposedly it was great schools. Obviously, the reading program sucks. And so I made sure that the younger two got phonics. And so they were fast readers. My oldest daughter wasn't. She did not become a reader, really, until she told me this, like her senior year in school, that and she's a good writer, which is a crazy thing. She never actually read an entire book until her senior year in high school, when her English teacher, they did A Brave New World, and her English teacher was explaining the context of it. And so then she was so interested in it that she would like read it, and she would come home and she would, want to talk about it and explain the book and what was going on. But it was, I mean, I think you can reclaim it, but the reading, but it takes work, and it should be illegal. It should be illegal to whole language learning should be illegal. That should be, if we want to do anything about education, we should make sure that it's whole language learning is required across, or not whole language learning, but that phonics is required across the board. Because what happens is when you get people that don't read well, it's not that they're illiterate, it's just that they don't feel comfortable and confident in their ability to read and understand, then they trust whatever somebody else says. And so then you have people that are more easily manipulated and controlled. So it's important that from the very beginning, if they know how to read, they can, and read well, they can do anything. I'm not anything. I mean, teaching is still important, but if you have somebody who can read and read like around a topic, even if they happen to come in contact with a bad teacher, that bad it's going to be have less impact because they can do reading on their own. I mean, you can't replace good teachers are important, but if you don't have good teachers, reading can go a long way, right? And I used to tell my Sunday school kids, never ever, never ever believe something just because somebody tells you, because people can misunderstand something that they've been told. And a second. So what jobs are they doing? Well, it's the thing. They're the thing is, there's a lot of money in programs and in education programs selling curriculum, and it's a whole racket. I mean, they don't even sell books anymore. It's really hard to get actual books in schools. It's almost like an act of Congress to get a physical textbook. And the thing is, you actually understand better if you're reading from a physical book than if you're reading online. But what they do is they deliver the curriculum primarily through like online, so they can license it, and so they have more control over it, right? But and then licensing online delivery of content requires sales of Chromebook equipment to be able to do that. It's a whole racket. Yeah. So Anthony is saying Dolly Parton gives away lots of books. Yeah, she does. She has actually my nephew does that. You can sign up for Dolly Parton's through her nonprofit, and she'll send, what is it, to age 5? She sends a book every month to kids age 5. Yeah, and that's important. But this is my other story while I'm on the topic of phonics and reading. When I was teaching Sunday school, I used to teach third graders. So this is at the point where they should be pretty, you know, established in reading, right? And they would have, and I went to a big church. So what's my favorite author? Hmm. That's a good question. I don't know if I have a favorite. I have a lot of people I like. I really like C.S. Lewis. I like both his, these are my two, I would probably say. C.S. Lewis and George MacDonald, because, like, when I was young, I grew up watching their fairy tale, or reading their fairy tales, like Chronicles of Narnia, you know. But also, George MacDonald has a lot of really amazing, um, you went to Sunday school with nuns. Yeah, I've never been Catholic, so I don't know what that's like. But I hope it was positive. I hope it was a positive thing. But yeah, like George MacDonald, I read his fairy tales growing up, and now I read a lot of his fairy tales, and then also he had a lot of novels, like Gothic novels, that I really had a big impact on me. And then now I read like more of his philosophy. Like they wrote so much, but those are probably my two favorite: George MacDonald and C.S. Lewis. But um, what I was gonna say about Jane Austen, uh, I don't know. I like Jane Austen, but I don't know. It's not I don't know. I've read it. It's not my favorite. There's just something about, I don't know. I like it, but no, they're not my favorite, absolute favorite that I can just read all the time. I don't know why that is, but maybe I should go back and read her again. Yeah, it's been a while since I read her. Maybe I'll get more from it if I read her again. But yeah, so I talking about the teaching the kids. I like never, I told them, you need to be able to know the Bible for yourself, read it for yourself, because sometimes people will say things that aren't true, and you need to be able to know that for yourself. But we had, it was a big church we had, and there would be kids from all, not just, one elementary school, but multiple district, schools and different districts. And it was really interesting to me that there was one Sunday, I remember this clearly. We went, and there was an entire table of kids that didn't know what a syllable was. And we were teaching them the books of the New Testament, and they couldn't even, we weren't asking them to read the word, because, the New Testament words are, names of the books are, some of them are kind of long, but they couldn't even repeat it after us. So like Thessalonians, they couldn't repeat it. And so it was just so bizarre to me. I was like, do you guys know what a syllable is? And I'm like, sound, they're parts, words are made up of parts, and each part, you could like clap your hands for a sound, that's a syllable. And so my undergraduate degree is in business. Was not a did not get a degree in education, but it was, I almost felt like I had to, um okay, that was a prayer. When I work and when I play, thou be with me through the day. Teach me what to do, and say, sweet holy Jesus. That's good. That's good. I had my teacher, or not teacher, my professor in the apologetics program that I went through, Holly Ordway. She's Catholic. She talks about the importance of having set prayers, like when you don't know what to pray, those are good ones to fall back on. But yeah, so anyway, I with the kids, we wrote it out on the name of the New Testament book. We wrote it out on the blackboard. I'm like showing them, what the syllables were. And there was this one girl who was, um, she had tell, you like the book of Numbers? I just recently got an appreciation for the book of Numbers. I think I've talked about that before. Or you mean numbers generally? Do you mean the book or the just numbers generally? I'm talking about the book. But anyway, on the syllables, there was this one little girl, and she'd always been like, you could tell she had sort of taken on like she was like the funny dumb girl, and you can just tell that, at 8, that's the math. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, you could tell that's what she thought, how she thought of herself. And so I was showing them what a syllable was and how to break down the words into parts. And so after we did that, and she understood like how words were put together with sounds, and I'm not even joking, she had the entire book, or all the books in the New Testament, memorized in like 5 minutes, and she could say it. But yeah, so, and it was just because she hadn't been taught right. She hadn't been taught how to understand it, and so she thought she was done when that wasn't the reality. The truth was that she didn't have good teaching. That was the thing. So the Bible can be scary when you're young. Too young. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that the world itself is scary. Like, if you had to deal with the totality of life when you're young, yeah, that can be scary and overwhelming. And the Bible is a picture of life, but, um, you give age appropriate information for the age. And I know that when I was growing up, we had the Bible and picture books, and then there are Bibles that are, just have the stories in them, but the reality is that at 8, there's a lot of violence in life. There's a lot of violence in life, and um, when you read the Bible, there are a few parts where it's not true, like that it's more overt. But normally in the Bible, even when they're talking about violence, it's not nearly as vivid or salacious as when you're just watching the news, or if you were watching some of the current cartoons. There's a lot of violence there, but um, I know that that's one of the reasons that behind like book banners, and not that they are trying to ban the Bible, but some of the things that they want to ban. Some things I agree with them on, but um, some of the books, it's because it talks about subjects that are a little too real or something. But the reality is that um, kids are living in the real world, and some of them live a worse nightmare than anything that you'd find in a Bible or a book. But I don't know. I guess that's one of the things about, and kids just want to play when they're young. That's what they should be able to do. Yeah, they should just be able to play with their young. But the reality is that that's not the truth for a lot of people. Yeah. And Anthony's saying you're forced to sit in a chair from a young age. Not good. Yeah, that's the thing. And the other thing too is like, we're talking about different learning styles. I was reading this once. I'm reading a study about different learning styles, And it was a study of medical doctors. I think it was in India, but they were talking about like some people have multiple ways that they learn. Like visual and reading are the most, is it visual, reading, audio, and kinesthetic are those the four reading styles. So visual and reading, those are two commonly paired um, learning styles. But if you have a kinesthetic learning style, the odds are that you probably don't have another uh, mode of learning that works for you. So, um, the way our different systems in Germany let you play longer. That's interesting. But they don't go for as long in school in Germany either, do they? It's a shorter day. I think that's right. I think I read that. But our um, current systems, they don't really. It is about more regulation sometimes, I think, than rather learning. Because if you're a kinesthetic learner, it's not really. I haven't noticed that our education system even allows for that at all. It almost inhibits it. And so you probably won't be, um, I don't know. It just seems to me like it's not, even though the knowledge of there is that there's different learning styles that they're not catered to or allowed for, given space for, it seems to me. So, yeah. But anyway, but yeah, the little girl I was talking about when she was just her learned what a syllable was, she was able to do her learn the books of the New Testament like in 5 minutes. So I think a lot of times that when there are problems with learning in kids, it has nothing to do with, it's not the kid, it's that the systems fail them. And I think that a lot of times uh, it's because that the money's gotten control of the district or something, it's not, the programs are continued because somebody's getting paid for them, not because they're good programs. Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's a, everybody needs education, and education is important, right? You can't have a society or a productive and effective society without it. And there's a lot of money in it, and there's people that are um, just to be honest with you, I don't think anything owned by a hedge fund should be able to touch education. if if a hedge fund is involved in something, you know that they're going to suck all the money out of it, and they're going for the profit, not necessarily, and the short-term profit, not for what's good for whatever it is that they're investing in. I mean, this is the thing. We look at the stock market as the whether an economy is doing well or not, or whether we're doing well as a country or not. Does that really have anything to do with it? Does it have much of all to do with it? I don't know, because you go and look at the quality of life in the United States, and we're like, I don't know, like 23 in the world. I mean, we may be the finance center, but we're certainly not uh, doing well for people as a whole. I don't know what just came up. Okay, so my school, they expected everyone to be stupid. Only a few exceptions that are up there for schoolwork. We teach people to remember things. It's a terrible learning style. Yeah, we need to understand it. I mean, what good does remembering things if you don't understand what it means? And that goes back to like sound and meaning. Um, I do really think that, I haven't been reading studies about this, but I do really think that being able to not only comprehend, like understand what they're saying, but understand how the what you're reading fits into a bigger picture, I believe that how you learn to read probably factors into a lot of that. And I think that that can be developed and learned, but it's a lot easier if you get those skills when you're younger, I think. But for people who didn't get good reading skills growing up, that were taught badly, or don't feel comfortable like learning, um, there's always, we can always learn. I mean, we have our brains can develop new neural pathways. I mean, it can be developed. It may not be come as easily as it would have if you had learned it when you were 5, but you can still develop that skill. And I think I don't care what age somebody is, I think it's useful, it's important, not just useful, it's important to be able to read for yourself, learn and understand. There's a book called by Mortimer Adler, How to Read a Book. It's amazing. It's amazing. It took me so long to get through that because I was taking notes the whole time, but that is like how to read and how to read well. That's a great book that concentrating on why it's important to learn. Once this is drummed into kids, learn better. Yeah. So we, and even like, if you at some point you've you have a certain like intellectual or capacity or ability to understand and learn, we don't stay at that spot. We always have to continue to develop it. If you used to be a good reader and then you get off and you don't read for a lot and you get into these, just watching like 1 minute reels and aren't used to holding a thought, that is training your brain to have a short attention span. And I think it's probably a good idea to limit the amount of time that you spend on like, you know, things that subtract from your attention span to be able to actually focus. But what was I was gonna say? Oh, yeah. So this is the other thing. I had also, I think it can be helpful to recognize that like when you take any, like what you eat, if you're going out, like just your physical health, but also any medications you're taking can affect your ability to read and understand and process information. I had, the only time I've really been in the hospital other than my pregnancies was when I had my gallbladder out, and they had to do 2 procedures because I had my pancreas was inflamed too. And so they put me under anesthesia twice. And after that, I was like, my brain was just not working right. I would read something and it was like, so normally when I read, there's thoughts and ideas that will be popping up that are related to it. And it was like, it was just flat. There were no there were no thoughts that were coming, that were sparking from what I was reading. And I would be writing something and I knew that there was a word that I knew, but I couldn't think of it. It would just be like right there, but I couldn't think of it. And then I would read something and I would think, I know I should be making a connection here to something else, but it just wasn't. It's just my brain was not processing in the same way as it had before. And I was just talking to some people, and because this was the summer before I was doing my last semester in the graduate program. And I'm like, I have to be able to think. I can't get through this last term. And you have inattentive ADHD, so it's difficult to concentrate. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think practicing, um, it's like anything else, things aren't easy for us. You may have to like work harder, but I think those things can be developed, I think. But somebody told me, yeah, it's probably the anesthesia you're under, that it's just going to take time to um, for that to work out of your system, so you'll be able to think like you did before. But what I since I wasn't able to really analyze and assess the way I had before, I actually spent like time going through. This may sound weird, but at the time this was 2017. It was right after we had this crazy election. I went through campaign finance reports and just made notes of things. And it was something about going through, like actually looking at the physical reports and just going through and, seeing same form, seeing different information. It was just something about going through all those one after another that kind of helped me, I don't know, get my brain back functioning again, getting into a process of identifying information like this is the same, what is different about this, what stands out, just identifying those things. And I think it was that kind of helped me get my brain working again the way it had before, and being able to make you know connections between information. But um, we understand that if we stop working out or moving, that our muscles will atrophy. But it's the same thing about our brain. We have to use it and develop it and exercise it, I think. But anyway, well, those were just my thoughts. I'm obviously going to change my title on the stream because I talked about something other than I was going to. And my battery is getting low on my phone. So I was just out in the middle of a walk. But anyway, thanks for joining me. And I will do another update later. But yeah, check in with your local school district or with kids around you and ask how they're being taught reading, because phonics are important, and we should be making a push to get bad reading programs out of our schools. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.